Grab your favorite alcoholic or non-alcoholic beverage. Do not drink and drive. Sit back and relax and enjoy the latest episode of Why Complain When You Can Whine. Everything in this podcast is for psychoeducational and entertainment purposes only. Welcome to Why Complain When You Can Whine, making sense of the senseless. Join us as we attempt to make sense of toxic nonsense. I am Dr. Jody Lorman, licensed clinical psychologist, and today it is morning, mid-morning, either way. It's Bloody Mary mimosa time, but I don't have a Bloody Mary or mimosa. Yes. And so I am drinking. This is called Cafe Bustelo. It's a new one though, because I drink these, but this is a new one that's dulce de leche. So it's with caramelized and vanilla notes. And because this is Why Complain When You Can Whine, I don't have wine. That would be kind of gross, putting wine in my coffee, but I am putting in my Bailey's Light. Because to be honest, this is pretty sweet, and this one is not that sweet, so it kind of cut it a little bit.
Oh, that's good.
It gives a little bit of, like I said, just zhuzhing up last time. I zhuzhed it up. So nice. my grumpy mug my niece gave me because I am grumpy.
Well,
we didn't know.
God, I would love the Seven Dwarfs mugs. Those are great. And then depending on what mood you're in that day, you can choose your mug.
And I love that they're big. I love big mugs. I love big mugs, and I cannot lie.
I love it. Well, I am Bree Burry, and who am I? And I'm a licensed.
Let me remind you. Let me see.
Yeah, I'm a licensed registered therapist up in British Columbia, Canada, in Vancouver. And I am just drinking coffee, but my mug says, I fucking love you.
Oh, I like that. And who gave you that?
My bestie.
I thought you were going to say I bought it.
Yeah.
That is fine too.
Right? I love mugs.
I fucking love me.
Yes.
Times.
Yes, times, right. So what are we talking about today, Dr. Lerman?
Last podcast, and if you didn't listen or watch, go back and listen and watch. At the end, we were discussing how the legal system in the United States, even state to state, but in the United States is very different from the legal system in Canada. Mm-hmm. Now, I am very familiar, unfortunately, with a lot of the legal system here because I have been on both sides of civil and criminal. Yeah. Criminal too. Not me, but I've been on both sides of the civil and the criminal. And our system from start to finish is fucked up. On either side, on both sides, I fucking hate our legal system.
And why is that?
Working in prison for 13 years, I know people might be like, oh, that's not true. But even my inmates and I used to have discussions on this. And the inmates, yes, they're predominantly of color. There's a lot of Blacks. There's a lot of Hispanic or Mexican. And trust me, there is a difference in prison between Hispanic and Mexican. I cannot remember what it was, but I used to have guys ask me, what's the difference? I'm like, I don't know. You guys are the ones that say it. I think Mexican is from Mexico, and Hispanic is any Latin down south.
Oh, they're all, I want to say that they're all derived from Hispanic because Spaniards are the ones that infiltrated Mexico. The Mayans were local natives within Mexico, right. And then all the other regions.
But when it comes to you have paisas, there's just different categories in prison. And so I was talking to my inmates, and most people think that it is very much racial. And it is, but prior to it being racial, it is socioeconomic.
Yeah, okay.
And the Benjamins are what talks. If you do not have the money, it does not matter what color you are or what race or ethnicity you are. If you have the money, O.J. Simpson, perfect example. Mm-hmm. He was Black, has all the money. Because when you have money, you can hire all the attorneys that can do everything.
Well, it's like anything in the world. If you have money, you can get anything done. And the money makes the world go round, right?
And you can get DNA testing, no problem. You can get all the things that someone, a public defender. We have public defenders here. I don't know what you have there, but public defenders are, if you cannot afford an attorney, one will be assigned to you in a criminal case.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yes and no. Yeah, we have district attorneys and we have like, it's the same. It's the same. Yeah. So you'll have one appointed to you, but I mean, really, uh,
They've got a stack this big of
mhm,
cases that are appointed to them.
mhm,
So someone who has, I mean, I've seen public defenders walk in with massive loads of files.
mhm,
And you think that that person, I am not saying they're a bad attorney by any means. They have to be a fairly decent attorney and to juggle all the cases, but
mhm.
we're only human. So if I,
Yeah, no. If you want to get off, if there's been a criminal, it's the same thing. Then you're going to have the money to hire a criminal lawyer. Yeah, it's the same thing here.
because
Yeah.
imagine you get one client in therapy that you
Mhm,
can see however many times they want to be seen, however long they want to be seen. You can work on their issues, no worries. That's because they're paying. And then
mhm,
you're getting maybe pro bono. And so you have 18, 19, 20, 50 cases. You can only give them so much
mhm.
of your time. And
I
it's not
know.
that you're a bad clinician, it's that I just don't have the time. We can only do so much in our allotted time.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So then, and then not even on the criminal side, but on the, I'm going to stay on the criminal side for a second. Because you have someone and you don't have the money, a lot of times they're going to take a plea to keep
Yeah.
it from being so expensive. I have
Yeah.
guys in prison that were like, well, I was facing life and I didn't have the money. I have no money, but they said, here, 10 years. Now, 10 years or life. When you don't have money, sadly, you don't have the luxury of saying, no, I'm fighting this is my hill to die on. I
But
am,
you know what's crazy? Like the pleas, if they take a plea, you can get off and not do any time. There was a I don't know her personally. I just know from a past relationship uh, of a person who lives in the States, works as a nurse practitioner. I was working as a nurse practitioner, has her PhD in nurse practicing, and got caught doing illegal opioid sales and Medicare fraud. And that's a big thing. It was being investigated by the FBI. It was plastered all over the news. She, another nurse practitioner, and a doctor were held, what got caught. And they were facing up to, I don't know, like 20 years to like it's a huge deal. Yeah, all she wound up doing was paying 10 grand in the end and having maybe like a sort of a probationary period after. And that was
do
it.
you have a good attorney? You
Maybe. I mean, I have no idea how it really went, but I mean, she
yeah.
was facing up to like millions of dollars in fines as well as jail time and going to prison. Nope,
Yeah.
she didn't, and she's still working as a nurse practitioner or as doing injectables down in Las Vegas.
And she didn't get
Mm,
her license taken away, which is
nope.
that right there just
So what does
boggles
that
my
say? Because I mean, well, here's the thing. It's a federal, it's not even just a
mind.
state. The
Yeah.
FBI was investigating is Medicaid fraud. Like it's a big deal. I don't know if she's Canadian. I don't know if she can practice up in Canada now as an, I doubt it because they would go through her history like a fine tooth, or if it got expunged. I mean, I have no idea. I don't know how it works.
Surprising now. And because they're doing this to Canadians here in the United States, I'm surprised they're not going to find out and then deport her because any kind. There are people, again, I get it. It's color of the skin a lot here, but they are deporting Canadians as well. Not
Well,
as
yeah,
many,
this happened a few years ago, 2019, but she
but
wasn't deported. She's Canadian, but she lives in the States as
right.
a
But
full
right
resident.
now, with them picking people off the streets, this way, if she was brown, if they're going through and someone had a brown person had
Well,
a
because it's
DUI
race related.
5 years ago, yeah, they're deporting them. So now this is where with plea bargains and stuff like that too, this is where color of skin does make a difference because
That's
white people are treated differently. So once you get past the money and how much you pay, white people are treated differently.
that's the white privilege thing.
They're giving small, lesser sentences. But when you want to talk about it was termed affluenza.
Hmm.
There was a guy, and excuse me, put it in the comments if I get this wrong. The gist of it I didn't get wrong though. But he went to Stanford. They had a shit ton of money. He raped someone, but they had enough money that he just barely got a slap on the wrist. And that's where the affluenza, one of the where the term, I don't know if that's where it originated, but it was used a lot at that point in time because parents had money. He was a white college boy. It kind of was brushed away. Now, if
Hmm.
they didn't have money, that wouldn't have happened.
Hmm.
And unless they had a shit ton of money, if they were any other color skin, that probably wouldn't have happened.
Well, think about what you're going through right now with Trump. He apparently is over, he surpasses the Constitution somehow, and nobody's holding him accountable, and nobody's his criminal behavior, 34-time convicted felon, and the guy's walking free and running the country. So again, white privileged money.
Money, yeah, yeah.
So yeah, yeah, and that's what makes the world go round. The sad part is like it really does. It's like holding people accountable, and our judicial system in Canada is a fucking joke compared to the U.S. You say that you're frustrated with yours, well, ours is even worse. I mean, people can get away with literally murder. We don't have capital punishment. There's no death penalty here in Canada. Nobody gets death penalty, right? You get life in prison. And even then, people can get away with like sex offenders. Let's just use that as an example, right? We don't have the infrastructure and we don't have the resources to keep them imprisoned. And so they go through, they get deemed cured or that they've been and they've served their time and they're following all the rules. They're released and then they're reoffending within 24 hours.
Mhm.
Likely to, and we get a local warning, we'll get a community warning that'll be posted because it has to be that so and so has been released, is a high level sex offender and is highly likely to reoffend again. Um, and that's what they say.
Yeah,
And then they do. And
yeah.
then
No, I believe it
violate
because
the
they
rule.
are.
And then somebody else gets hurt. Somebody else again, they get off. There is nothing, and there's nothing holding them accountable. So they just get let out and then they get back into the system and then they get let out and then they get back into the system. I mean, you can create like the people here, even with murder and whatever, it's a slap on the fucking wrist. There's no long-term consequences.
And see, people here, having worked again in prison for 13 years, and I have said this many times on TikTok and other social media accounts. My dad was in prison for 5 years. Um, my dad was not alive when I started working in prison, so there were so many things I wanted to ask him and tell him, but it was my dad that got me, not got me, but he didn't get me the job. He's the one that said, work in prison, it pays well, and all of that. But so I know from my dad what went on, and then when I worked in prison, what went on. And the really interesting thing here in the States is that you have a whole progressive party where the vast majority of them, when someone gets like widely, it's like on the news or whatever, widely circulated, this person, like they shot up a school, let's say. And everybody is like, kill him, get him out of here, hang him by the feet, whatever. Just that guy needs to be gone. But then once they're in prison, oh my God, they're treated so inhumanely. Oh my God, they're only make $1 an hour when they're working or 50 cents an hour. Oh my God, they're treated so poorly in prison. It's like, this is the same person. These are rapists, murderers, child molesters. And when they're out on the streets, you're like, oh my God, literally hang them by the fingernails. And then once they're in prison, you want them treated like they're at a 5-star resort. We used to laugh about it in a sense because in prison you have what's called gallows humor. I
Mm.
used to say, "Oh my God, we need a podcast." My colleagues and I sitting in the office, I'm like, if we could put a microphone in here, we would have the best podcast ever because of the things that we would say. But we used to joke like the supervisor of our administrative segregation, which is the prison within the prison, used to say, what, these people come in here and they expect pillow mints on their beds. And they expect all this luxury, like fluffy towels and shit. This is prison, people. I worked in a level 4, which is a maximum security prison. It wasn't the worst in California, but it Level 4 is the highest level. We do not have a death row there. But
Right.
we had a lot of guys that were commuted from death row. I actually had some on my caseload that were commuted from death row. And so these were bad people, the vast majority. Do I believe that there are people in prison that are innocent? Yes, I do. I believe that, let's say you have 5,000 people in prison, there's probably 50 of them that literally got in and shouldn't be there. Then there's another percentage that it's like, okay, maybe not that crime, but the 500 others that you did before that should have brought you in here in the first place. And then there's the rest that literally did their crime. And so many people are like, we got to abolish prisons, prisons inhumane. And my friend was like that. She's like, I hate prisons. They need to be abolished. And I'm like, okay, where are we going to put these people? When people talk about abolishing prisons, they're usually thinking of these low-level crimes like drug crimes and stuff like that, yeah, it's a little harsh. But it's like, where should murderers, serial killers, rapists, where do we put them? Child molesters, where do we put them? And how do we treat them? I used to have a lot of child molesters, and they try to get into the mental health program because they think it's going to protect them. Because the least liked people in prison are child molesters.
Are pedophiles, yeah.
Yeah, so they come in and they try to get into the mental health, and it's like, sorry, you know, that you're not mental health. And then I'm scared, I'm scared. It's like, yeah, but what about your victims? I bet they were scared too. And they were little. And you're a grown-ass man. So go forth and do whatever. But so yeah, letting them out, and they're not gonna they don't get cured.
Nope.
They don't get rehabbed. So do they put them in in California, they don't do this all the time, but there's like places out in the desert that they try to send them all. And then the desert communities are like, why are you sending them all here? Do you have places like that where they release them, or do they just release them?
Yeah. Well, people threatening to take away institutionalization for criminals or people who are not following social construct laws, and it would be just the world would be chaos and so fucking dangerous. It's dangerous enough as it is. I mean, and people, yeah, we need to have, and it's prison. Go back as to what prison used to look like 60, 70 years. Like, it's not supposed to be a hotel. It's not supposed to, it's inhumane for a reason. If you see that as being inhumane, you still are being fed, you still have a shelter and a roof over your head, and you're not, dying from the elements outside. So, that should be, you should be grateful for that. At the end of the day, what's going to correct people's behavior? And even when you are that far down the road of antisocial personality and traits and there's no cure, nothing, no inhumane treatment that you even give them is going to change who they are.
I had a guy who even other inmates moved away from him when he said this because they literally believed him too. They know when they're bullshitting and stuff for the most part. And they all kind of went, whoa. I had a guy in my group one time who had killed multiple people, so he would be considered a serial killer. And he was like, oh yeah, when I get out again, I'm humans are cockroaches. I know at least 7 I'm gonna get. And the inmates around him just kind of like, dude's crazy. They knew he wasn't joking, he wasn't playing, he wasn't just acting bravado in front of other inmates. They were just like, whoa, they were creeped out by that too. And this guy means what he says.
I know they do.
If they ever get out, yeah.
They don't care. Again, institutionalizing them isn't even going to change their behavior.
No.
So, there is people that, for petty crimes or for different things, because it is on a spectrum, that yes, you can, if the consequences are severe enough, they learn and they change. That's the whole point of incarcerating somebody.
Rehabilitation, yeah. Do you have minimum and maximum? Like, do you have levels? Because we have level 1, 2, 3, and 4.
We don't have, I don't believe we have that many levels. I think we have one maximum security prison out in the vicinity of where I am. And it's and then there's the Wilkinson prison over on the island, which is also more of a higher security prison. But that's all we have. If you know, we definitely do not have the resources. We don't also have the population that the US has,
Mhm.
right? And so, um, but again, you have to be doing some pretty severe stuff to be charged and incarcerated, right? You like severe stuff. I mean, people look at the guy who, and mental illness comes into play, who recently just took out in the Lapalooza um, Filipino festival, and he killed so many people. And there's still 6 people hospitalized from that incident that happened. Yeah.
Wow.
And again, we're looking at most likely schizophrenia, and a psychotic disorder for him to get in his car and to fucking run people over. But there's no mental institution. There's no psych institution for him to go in because he's mentally ill. He's going to have to go into prison. Will he go into prison? We don't know yet. There was a boating accident here locally where I live where a guy was speeding in a Scarab. It's a speedboat out in a local area in the ocean. And there was a freighter or a barge in the way, and apparently, but because he was speeding and he was drinking and he was being reckless, he wound up running over 2 kids on a tube, being pulled on another boat. One died. The other one is, I believe, on life support in the hospital still. I don't even know if he's going to survive or they're going to survive. Um, you know, and he was arrested right away, and he was let out the next day. And he's got a court date coming up August. And, you know, even if he is charged, will he go to prison? Probably not.
I know here, okay, just the prison system, we have level one, which is the lowest security. It's minimum. It's usually people who are either at the end of their sentences ready to go home or that had low level crimes. Then level two, level three, level two and three. No, one and two are usually dorms. Level
Right.
three is usually, it could be dorms, but it's usually cells. Like my dad was in a level three, and I remember we went to visit him and he comes walking out with this key hanging from his belt loop, and we're like, what is that? He goes, oh, it's a key to my cell. It's like, wait, what? He goes, yeah, between certain hours we can go in and out on our own. And I was like, whoa, okay, that was not what I thought prison was. And again, I think that they should have tours open to the public because people need to understand what they see in the media, what they see, the bias against prison from people who get out of prison, and then from the people who are in there and that work in there. And yes, people are going to be going, oh, the people that work in there are corrupt. There are corrupt people in there too. However, in a level four, which is maximum security, we have a electrified fence, which no other, typically three doesn't have one. They have a barbed wire and razor wire and all that, but not electrified fence. That's for level four.
Right.
Guys have had to get to level four. You get points based on your crime, based on how many times you've been in prison, what the crime entailed, like enhancements. Was it part of a gang? Did you use a gun? Were there drugs involved? There's all these things that give you points. And the more points you have, obviously, the higher up you're going to be. Now,
Mhm.
every year that you have that you serve your term, you get a couple things in level four. One is called milestone credit. And that's like in mental health, every 6 months, if the guys went to their program, followed all the rules, did what they were supposed to do, we would put in for them to get 4 points off every 6 months. 4 points? I think it was 4 points. It could have been
Mhm.
every 6 months or every year because they go to committee every year. And then if
Mhm.
they do their custody program, they get points off. So every year they can get 8 points lowered on their points. So it
Okay.
gets them, the only ones that cannot get to minimum security ever are murder. If you're in for murder, you will never, no matter how low your points get, you're never going to go beyond level two ever.
Okay. Right.
So, and guys can get, if they get write-ups, if they get in trouble, their points can go up. So they can go up or down. You can go to a
Right.
level three, you get more freedoms. But in our prison, we had programs. We had college that the guys would go to. We
Hmm.
contract the prison system contracts with whatever colleges are around. Ours was Coastal College, I think it was. And they can take classes in their cells. There's times where they have proctors come to take the exams and stuff like that. We had GED school, so you can get your GED and then you can go on. There are people that got master's degrees in
Oh
prison.
yeah. Yeah, I know.
And then we also have trades. We have plumbing, where you can take all your exams so that way when you get out, you can get licensed. Now, plumbers make a ton of money. So
Yeah.
that's really good. Guys can, you people think that we just toss them out on the street, and they do. They get $200 when they as gate money when they leave, and they're pretty
Right.
much on their own. But they can get a plumbing certificate. They can get electrician. They can get computer services or computer sciences. They can get masonry. Oh, we had masonry. They would build these really pretty like fireplaces and brick things, and then they tear them all down and start over again. So you can
Mm,
learn trades in prison. You can get a degree in prison. This is
mhm.
if they want them. We had, Tim Robbins, I think it is, in
Oh, so Shawshank Redemption? Yeah,
yeah.
that's a great movie.
He came every week, I think it was, and he did an actors guild, a
Hmm.
group with the guys. And so they
Yeah.
would go and then they would have graduations with their family.
Hmm.
We had an artist group where at the end of so many weeks, they would have a big sale where they would sell their stuff. There were so many things. They were called ill tags as well, inmate leisure time activity groups. So in their leisure time, they sign up for these groups and they do these things. If they're in mental health, they get mental health groups. So there's things for guys to do in prison, should they choose to do them. They're supposed to do them. It's mandatory to go to school if you don't have a GED. They don't do it. They find ways around it. What are we going to do? Put them in jail? So
Yeah, if they don't do it, they're already in jail.
yeah. So there's
Right.
not much we can do. But for all the people that are like, oh my God, it's so inhumane. We had a Title 22, which was about this big when I started working there. It is a book of their rights, inmate rights, and they learn it like the Bible. By the time I left, it was about the yay big.
Wow.
It changed. And they have so many rights. They literally, and we would talk about this all the time, they have more rights than the staff.
Mm,
They're allowed to do a lot of things. But
that's great.
people don't know this. And I'm not saying prison is a great place by any means at all whatsoever.
Well, you're just losing your social freedom from the rest of the
Right.
world.
We
And
had Common, John Legend, Alicia Keys, I can't remember who else, come and do concerts on
well, it
the
was
honor
like Johnny
yard.
Cash went back in the
Yeah.
day, Folsom Prison, right? Yeah, I know.
And
It's
they did them at 6 o'clock so that staff was gone. Most of the staff was gone because we leave at 5.
right.
So we weren't even allowed. Inmates were.
Yeah.
Were.
It's mind blowing. I mean honestly our judicial system and everybody, a lot of people think that it's our government, right? Like we have a liberal government. We have had a liberal government for years, but I mean it was like this when we had a conservative government. And you know, if a conservative government came back into play, would it change our judicial system? No, because we just don't have the infrastructure. We don't have the resources.
Do you have federal prisons and Providence or territory prisons?
Provincial? Yeah, yeah, we do. Well, or provincial prisons. No, not federal. We have
Oh,
provincial
okay.
prisons.
So does the federal government then has nothing really to do with it? It's like whoever is running
Well, federal
Congress.
crimes. Like okay, so say government fraud, right? Like if you fuck over the CRA and you are stealing from the government, then yeah, that's a federal crime, and you're gonna go to you're gonna serve time. But
But
it'll
what
be
kind of prison do you serve time in?
there isn't separate prisons for that,
Okay.
right? There
So you just
isn't.
go where everybody else would go. Okay.
Yep. Yeah. So there isn't a designation again because we don't have the population and we don't have again the money. I mean, we closed down the only psychiatric institution that we had in BC back in 2014. And everybody that's, what we used to consider criminally insane, right? So, like schizophrenics that are dangerous, right? Unmedicated, unsupervised. They're all on the streets and they're all doing drugs. So
Yeah.
our homeless population and our has gone way up.
Yeah.
And and then when we had the Olympics in 2010, what did they do? They just shipped them up, put them on a bus and shipped them back east.
Yeah.
it to get them out to make the city look clean, to look good.
2028, we have the Olympics. Guess what they're doing?
Yeah,
Same thing.
exactly. Exactly.
But
And again, to make it look like it's
yeah,
more, suitable. But there's just we just don't have the resources. And it's the stupidest thing. We need more psychiatric care workers, right?
yeah.
And
See, Ronald Reagan in California in the 70s, it was fucked up mental health in California. Closed all the state hospitals, and that's how everybody got out on the streets. Now then Ronald Reagan became president. So he fucked up California's mental health and then he fucked up the whole the country's mental health. So
hmm
yeah, all the state hospitals, everything. We have state hospitals, but
hmm
they're usually connected with the prisons.
Mm.
So
Well, we didn't have like the state, well, or sorry, our provincial hospital. We don't have states, we have provinces, but was very close to actually the penitentiary that we have out here.
yeah,
It was in Coquitlam, so it was in the same vicinity, but they had a whole ward of the hospital where people were pretty much incarcerated if they were criminally
yeah.
insane, right? So it's and keeping them on lockdown and medicated and all the rest of it.
Because
Um,
I'm sorry. Sorry, just
no, no,
interrupt.
no, go ahead. No, I wasn't going to say anything else.
We have guys that, and I worked in a men's prison, so I'm not speaking about women, but I'm imagine it's very similar. We would have guys, if someone was a danger to themselves or others, or gravely disabled, they would go to our mental health crisis bed. From the
Mm,
mental health crisis bed, we would ship them off to, at the time it was called Department of Mental Health, and then it became prison PIP, I think prison inpatient or something like that. It changed right when I was leaving, so I didn't really absorb what it was called. But so I just knew PIP. And what would happen is after they'd been in the crisis bed for 10 days, if they couldn't be stabilized for whatever reason, we would send them. And some guys really loved certain hospitals, state hospitals, because it was not like a prison. They got to get out and about, and they had movies and an amphitheater where they'd have performances, and some
Fuck, man, do I need to go commit a crime so I can get institutionalized? Because
and
I
then
mean,
go suicidal. So then you can go to the Department of Mental Health,
hmm.
and get out of the prison and into the hospital and have, there were guys
and
that,
and these guys are malevolent, so they're the king of deception. So they know how to fake all this stuff in order to get out of prison and into a mental health
yeah.
institution.
And if
See,
they
this
were
is
sent to
again,
one that they didn't like, because there was like four we would send them to, and they all had their little whatevers, like, you prefer this hotel over that hotel, right?
yeah.
If they didn't get the hospital that they wanted, because it wasn't based on what they did, a lot of times it was based on occupancy openings, beds that were available. What they would do is they'd go to the state hospital if they had to, because otherwise they'd try to stay in their cell until the bus left. They'd board up, they wouldn't come out. And then once the bus left, it was like, okay, now I can go to a different hospital, which didn't always work out in their favor. But they would go to the state hospital for the minimum time. I think they get reevaluated every 2 weeks, and then they would come back. But I'm not exaggerating. As soon as the bus doors open and they step on prison grounds, I'm suicidal, so that they could play the game all over again until they got the hospital that they went to. And we have to take every,
Mhm.
every I'm suicidal seriously.
Seriously, you can't not, you can't. I know. I'm
Because
innocent.
most of the ones that happened were guys that were like, oh, you don't believe me? You don't believe me? Okay, I'm going to show you. And they didn't mean to do it. And I know they didn't mean to do it because I've talked to a lot of the guys that, like, I had one guy that was like, yeah, I hung myself, but I planned it exactly when she was going to walk by was when I did it,
Hmm.
so
So
that they
that
would catch me.
they get caught and then taken down. It's
I'm like, what would have happened?
uh,
They would have had an alarm, and they would have had to run to the alarm. You would be hanging. You would be dead. And he's like, I didn't think about that.
yeah, well, you're in prison. You don't think about a lot of things.
Yeah.
Fuck. Yeah, I know. I don't know. Our world is just sort of messed up. If you go back in time, it's kind of like if you look at everything, right? We need to find balance. We went from authoritarian parenting to abusing our kids. Well, that fucked everybody up. And now we're doing gentle parenting, and that's fucking all the kids up. And now we live in a world of anxiety because they have no structure and no boundaries. And that's creating fear because there's no safety. And it's like, we just need to find a happy medium.
Well,
So,
they say
like,
moderation and everything.
yeah, but again, we're not doing that.
No.
And with prison, we went from, bare bones, ball and chain, fucking straight prison garb
Yeah.
and having to do, work and hard labor and as part of your punishment. And being incarcerated meant the bare bones, maybe a
Mhm.
blanket and a thin mattress, and you get fed so you don't die and hydrated so you don't die. And that was it.
Yeah.
And
Well,
now it's inhumane, but you
yeah.
think about what you were doing that was inhumane to get you in there, or, robbing or stealing, again, antisocial behavior, entitled, breaking the law. We have social construct in law for a reason. It's to keep order, law and order. Hello. So that there isn't chaos. And
Well,
now everything has to be, human
and
rights.
here, sadly, again, going back to the judicial system itself, it is all about the Benjamins, and then comes the socioeconomic. But here's the thing, too, is that it is a little, how do I put this? This should not be happening. This right here should not be happening. When you go to court for in the United States, you hear, oh, that's the good judge. You got a good judge. Okay, that's good. Or, oh, that's the hanging judge. Shoot, we need to try to get out of their courtroom. The law is the law, and the letter of the law should be the letter of the law. And if there's some wiggle room, that's fine.
Amongst everybody that's in the
Yes.
position to make that call. But
Yes.
here's the end, but at the end of the day, it's the jury, really. I mean, if
If you
you're
have a
going
jury
to
trial.
have a jury, yeah, if you have a jury trial, that's
But
right.
it's not just the jury, and I learned this from my dad's criminal case. It is the jury instructions that the judge makes that instructs the jury on what they can and cannot do and what they can and cannot look at. And
So they're the ones that are really dictating how the jury is seeing the evidence and
yes,
how they're making their decision. Yeah,
yes.
so that's like that's influenced, right?
Mhm.
There is no, yeah. Oh, and again, it just depends on the person you get. So there isn't really sort of a universal way of thinking,
And
and
I think that in
it's all
itself,
subject to.
and I get that people are different. We're all different. I'm going to be a little more compassionate maybe than you are, or vice versa. However, it shouldn't be you're the hanging judge, so we don't want to go in your courtroom. And this
Mm,
is the judge that like they're toward the end of their term, they're getting ready to retire and they don't give a fuck.
mm,
So, there's so many different, again, it shouldn't matter what attorney what judge you get. The law is the law is the law. And if there's any variance, it shouldn't be, holy fuck, you got 50 years. This
hmm.
judge only gave me 5
Yeah, no,
for the same exact
there's
thing.
no continuity.
No.
There's no consistency or continuity, and that's not the way it should be. Again, when you're talking about law and order, it should be, and this is where law gets really convoluted because of the loopholes that you can go through. The lawyer that I hired in order to get divorced was retiring. I also didn't have $2 million, so he didn't give a
Oh,
fuck. $500 an hour, he didn't care. You're like, ah, you're small potatoes, and you're paying your retainer fee. I'm not even going to do anything. I could care less whether like he didn't even want to work for me. And he was retiring. He didn't care.
yeah.
It was so shitty. Had I not gone to him, my things would have been probably totally different. But our legal system is
And it
pretty
shouldn't
it's
be that way.
up, and it's not built for domestic violence. And even though I follow a guy who's a Canadian lawyer based out of Toronto, and that you can um, sue for, abuse or coercive control and I'm like, yeah, but you need $500 a fucking hour. And who has that? That's gonna drain you, and you're gonna be up to a $50,000 retaining fee before you even bat an eyelash.
Okay. My husband, when he passed away, I took his medical records to 5 different attorneys who all 5 of them told me, we cannot tell you that there wasn't something done wrong. We can't, but it's going to cost you way more money.
Hmm. Yep.
And
That's
it's
I was
like,
my friend. She's a lawyer. She's like, Bree, I could tell you that we could go fight this and we could try to go back and we could try to go and we could try to go through all of his savings and his money if he's hiding money in companies. We could do all that. It is going to cost you way more than what
Way
you're ever
more.
going to get child support. It's going to cost you way more than anything that you could even get back in order for a down payment to buy a home.
Yep.
There's no point. Unless you're working with a lawyer who's willing to work for you for free and do the diligent and do the hard work. And you could play that. You could go for a brand new person that just literally got sworn into the bar and they're brand new and they're working on their credibility and they're working and they're willing to fucking go for gusto. And you can pay next to nothing. But 90% of the good lawyers that are dealing with family law are, and working with another counselor that does this all the time, she says, the courts are not set up for narcissistic abuse or none of this stuff. It's gonna, and even if you do go and you got the money to fight, the likelihood of you winning, unlikely. All they care about is the kids at the
Yep.
end of the day. And, people are using their kids and pawning their kids, and it's just disgusting. Family law is the most corrupt, grossest form of law out there.
And it's super dangerous. I had to go to family court with my son's dad, and we were fine. But you have to go to like
Yeah, you do.
put it in the books, make
Yeah,
it legal what you're going
yeah,
to be saying stuff. And we
yeah, you
walked
do.
in this room and we have to pass the metal detector and you sit in this big room with a bunch of people and you cannot get up. You cannot get up because that is where so many things, domestic violence calls are the worst calls for officers to go out on
I
because
know.
that's where a lot of the instability, angry spouse, whatever.
Impulsive, yeah.
So in this, it was so surreal to me because we were sitting there and I was sitting with my son's dad. Most of the people are like separated and kept way far away, but we're sitting together and I'm like, I have to go to the bathroom. And I had to let them know and I had to go and come back. And if you want to go like by the window to stretch your legs, you have to tell them what you're
Mhm.
doing because it is so dangerous in family court. When I was getting my license, I went to a seminar on someone who did a clinician who was doing custody evaluations, and she said it is so dangerous. And I'm like, yeah, I don't ever
No,
want
it's
that.
absolutely gross. I have a friend that works in family law, and she was acting as my lawyer for a while, and it was just like you could tell because she's like, I feel gross charging you this much money, and I like it's just and there's just really just settle at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And where's the justice and the compensation for the person who's been totally fucking financially abused and raked over the coals? There is none. It's not set up for that, and it's disturbing. And I've had clients even from the US that have been like, I'm not safe, but the cops don't do anything.
Oh
And
no.
care.
Mm-mm.
They don't.
No.
They don't take it seriously. If you say I'm scared, and they're like, I had a client here, living on the island, and her partner was showing obscenely stalking behavior, cameras around the house, knowing she was going to pack up her stuff and leave. And oh, baby, you going somewhere? You packing your suitcase? I noticed that today. Like, and the way he would say it, she was fucking terrified. She didn't know what he was capable of. It was all threatening behavior. And I said,
Mhm.
you need to go to the police. Sure enough, she goes in and they're like, well, what do you want us to do? He doesn't have a criminal record.
And
What do you want us to do? He doesn't have a criminal record yet.
do you guys have like we can get a restraining order? However, restraining orders are a piece of paper. They don't do shit.
Yep. You
But
can,
they
but you
won't do
have
anything without a restraining order. So it's a catch
no,
22.
it is a catch 22. And so they said, we'll have, what do you call it? Victim services call you. And then they did and I just said, but already she was discredited. She was so emotionally distraught because she was being abused so badly in this relationship. She couldn't even put sentences together. And then you've got a fucking cop who is turning around and saying, well, and dismissing and so dismissive. And I went through the same thing when my daughter was being bullied so severely at school. She's only in grade 7. And, bless her heart, she didn't even really comprehend the level of things that were being said to her because she was 12. But it was a whole group chat, and it was the boys in the class. And this is so developmentally normal for boys at 12 to one up each other, shock value. What kind of harsh things can I say to get a reaction out of my friends because of the insecurity and the immaturity? But the whole thing now with kids is go kill yourself. So KYS. Um, right? KYS, KYS, KYS. It's like abbreviated. And they were calling it, and then the language coming out of their mouth, like I can't even repeat it. It was so horrific. She's tiny, she's short, and she's got freckles, and she's gingery, and you fucking white ass little leprechaun, fucking short midget, little fucking bit. Get back in the kitchen before I rape you. Make me a sandwich. Get back and make me a
Those
sandwich.
are MAGA right now.
Well, yeah, I know, right? But there was that, and then there was also, go out and buy the rope, I'll kick out the chair, 100% suicide squad. Like, and they're quoting video games, and they're telling her to go kill herself, and they're telling her to go hang herself, and they're telling her, get back in the kitchen, make me a sandwich before I rape you. And I'm like, I'm sorry, this is criminal shit.
Yeah.
Going to the RCMP. I walked in, the cop literally is like, and what do you want me to, like, what are your concerns here? I'm like, what are my concerns? What are my concerns? Isn't this criminal? Well, it's a bit of a gray, I'm going to have to contact the youth department. I said, fine, contact the youth. And he's like, well, why is she engaging with them? And I said, she barely is engaging with them. And a friend grabbed her phone. So now you're shaming her. He's like, well, she should be deleting. I said, no, she showed me. He's like, well, tell her not to engage with him further. I'm like, you think? Thanks, bud. Thanks for that. Again, it was Sunday. He was like, what the fuck? I look like a hysterical mother going in, and I wasn't. And the intimidation factor I got from that cop made me want to turn out and be like, I wish I hadn't bothered going in.
Yeah.
And then it turned out he did pass it along. When I told the school, the principal was on it like that. And she notified the constable that was part of their youth department. And he got in touch with me. And I talked to that guy for 2.5 hours. He's like, this is my job now. I
Yeah.
go around in the youth district to all the schools and I have the same conversations with all the boys. This is criminal. You can get a criminal, like, we can charge you. If the parents wanted to move forward and charge you, we can charge you, and often they're like terrified. It scares because they don't understand the ramifications. They're not emotionally and intellectually mature enough to
Hmm.
understand. They know what they're saying is wrong, but they don't know the impact they're having.
Yeah. Yeah.
So again, and most parents were horrified. One was not out of the situation. And then when it got into the right hands of the right police officer, it was good. But for the most part, I've dealt with so many people saying the cops don't do anything. Cops don't do
Yeah.
anything. Cops don't do anything.
We, when my son, and here's where our legal system again, fuck, when my son was molested, he
Mhm.
faced the perpetrator faced 60 to 100 years. That's what
Whoa.
they with everything they were charging him with, 60 to 100 years. So I'm like, nice, good.
Perfect.
Then we get this phone call, I think it was, and the DA, district attorney's office, took a plea bargain of 17 to 20 years. And I was furious. And I'm like, what? Wait, don't we get a say in this? Don't I get a say? And they said, no. They said, we don't want to put kids on the stand. So we will do whatever we have to do in plea bargains if we can to not have to have them back up on the stand to relive this.
Because it's
Because
traumatizing.
you have a right to face your accuser in the United States. The accused has the right to face their accuser in a court of law. So it is his right, the perpetrator, to have my son on the stand.
Mm-hmm.
Where I honestly, so he only got 17 to 20 years, and the motherfucker, this happened in 2011. My son was molested. He went to prison in 2013. He is out now. He's out on parole because he got good behavior time. Oh, this was what I was saying. If it would, I'm so sorry. I just realized I didn't finish the milestone things. So they get points taken off. The guys get 8 points taken off every year. But if you're participating in programs, then if you participate in what you're supposed to participate in and do what you're supposed to do, every 6 months to a year, you get 2 weeks off your sentence.
Right. Oh, there you go. So they know that they
So
can get out
he got
early.
milestones, he got good behavior, he had 1-to-1 time or whatever, and he had 85%. So it all adds up. So this child molester, who should be in for the rest of his life, got paroled after 11,
How old was your
11
son?
years. He's 8, he was 8.
Okay. So the biggest thing is
But
they do
also
want,
special needs, remember?
yeah, right.
Yeah.
But you want to keep kids off the stand. I do understand that. I
Yeah.
mean, it's fucking
But
traumatizing.
here's the thing that really pisses me off is they did an interview with my son. Because when we called the police and all that, they sent into what's called SCAN, and I cannot remember what it stands for, but it's where they do the whole evaluation. They take the pictures, they do the test, and they do the interview. So she sat there and interviewed him for a period of time. Why can't they put that on the stand? Why can't they just show the interviews of the kids?
Mm-hmm.
And oh, so we can't cross-examine them.
Well, yeah, you can't. And secondly, I mean, you'd have to know that there wasn't doctored in any way, that there was nobody prompting and there was nobody there d dictating or
Well, it's all
influencing.
recorded.
Yeah, I
It's
know,
all
but you
on video.
could also take chunks of that out, or you could
Yeah.
like you can manipulate it, right? So that there's a chance of it being manipulated. They're not going to. They need to have a live testimony so that there is no chance of it being coerced or manipulated or changed or doctored in any way. So I can understand why they don't, but why wouldn't they instead, and here's the thing, find a way to give kids the support they need if they have to take the stand to face the perpetrator, have an adult with them, a psychologist or somebody that is safe with them, sitting with them on the stand, holding their hand, like, I've got you, I'm right here, he can't hurt you, you're safe.
Because
If
when
they
that
have
happens, they
to,
get bigger sentences. When the person takes the stand, they usually get bigger
absolutely, and
sentences.
that they don't want to put kids on the stand, but there has to be a way where kids can garner the appropriate support
Yeah.
in that moment to sort of try to eliminate as much of the trauma as they possibly can facing a person who's caused them harm,
Hmm.
right? And that it's part of the protocol, but that they're not alone sitting on a stand and they're scared because they've got the person staring right at them. Yeah, that's traumatizing. But if you had, say, you, mom sitting there with him
Hmm.
or on the stand with him,
Or how
and
about put them in another room on TV camera? Just you're in the other room, so you don't have to see
yeah,
the guy, but
exactly.
you can
Yes,
hear everything
exactly.
goes
So
on.
that
Yeah.
the kid isn't looking right at the
Yep.
perpetrator because that's when they get fumbled and that's it's traumatizing. I know kids that have taken the stand with support dogs.
Yeah.
They've had dogs that kids that have had to testify against parental like pedophiles and molesters and harm, parents or caregivers or whatever, that the dog is there to keep the child calm because they're there for PTSD and they're there for trauma. And the dogs are trained in court to do this. Like, what an amazing additive. Why don't they do something along the lines of this? Or again, have them in a different room where they can't see and they don't even know that they're going up against the perpetrator, so that they're just
Right.
speaking
They're just
like
talking
they're just
like they
talking
did. Yep.
like they did being in the interview. And then that way it's all live, nothing's being influenced, nothing's being whatever. There's no breach of anything. And
Hmm.
they're testifying that way. So it's not, we've come a long way since 2011 when you think about it. It should have been done then, but it can be
Yeah.
done now.
Well, this motherfucker, he's on tape. When he spoke with when he was speaking to the detective, he confessed. He confessed and it's on tape. And
Well, he obviously, yeah, he confessed. So, but it's again,
yeah,
it's his level, is his sentence. He
yeah,
takes a lesser deal. He goes away to prison, but not for as long as you would want him to go
yeah,
away for.
yeah.
And again, child molesters or pedophiles don't change.
Nope.
But here's the thing with pedophilia is that, you can have repeated childhood abuse where a parent or a family member or somebody is abusing a child is considered pedophilia, but it's not really necessarily they're committing the act of pedophilia, but are they actual pedophiles? If you can have a sexual relationship with an adult, you're not considered a pedophile by it's fucked up, but it's minor attracted persons. Like if you actually look at the definition of a pedophile, they are not attracted to adults at all. They're only attracted to children.
But do you know how many of them are married and have
Oh,
kids?
but because they put on
Mhm.
a facade, but really to determine most pedophiles, if you are true by definition of pedophile, you wouldn't be married to a person. You wouldn't even be able to commit the act of sex. Try, but you would struggle because you're only attracted to children. Pedophiles often or deemed pedophiles are just repeating what was done to them in childhood. It's just generational trauma, which doesn't make it okay.
Right.
And they can heal from that. They can be cured from that. If they got rehabilitation, where they like if you were abused as a child sexually, you can get rehabilitation if you're not considered a true pedophile.
Yeah, but I was just gonna say, but that's yes, it's molestation, but it's a different, it's like just repeating that abuse cycle like they do with
Yeah,
physical abuse.
which you can be rehabilitated from, but a true pedophile you can't. Their
No.
brain chemistry, they are attracted to children. That's never going to change. And most of them don't offend. They stay isolated unless you're a sociopath or unless you're diagnosed as ASPD. You're going to commit the crime because you just don't give a fuck, right?
We had because I worked on our
Okay.
sensitive needs yards, our protective custody yard, which
Yeah.
is a lot of child molesters. And we had a guy who this was his second or third stint in prison, wasn't his first. He was in for child molestation, pedophile, and they had sent him his last sentence. He was sent to our state hospital for treatment. There is no treatment, but this was aversion treatment where apparently they show pictures of the kids and they give him a shock, something like that. He wanted back. He came back to prison pushing for going to that program. He wanted to go so bad. Every single day he tried to get back to that program. And it's like, dude, you can't go to that program unless you're paroling, and you are not paroling. He wanted to go so bad, but do you know why he wanted to go? Because they show pictures of little kids. And he wanted that. It's not aversion therapy. Aversion therapy, it doesn't fucking work.
No, it doesn't.
Child molesters.
Yeah, but that's again what it is. If they're a true pedophile, you can't cure that. If it's somebody that
No.
experienced molestation as a child and then repeated the behavior because it was done to them and it's a coping strategy or it becomes sort of an addictive, you can get
From the
somebody
trauma.
and work on the trauma, and you can rehabilitate that person, but you can't rehabilitate what people are now calling themselves MAPS, minor attracted persons. Fucked up.
Because that
No.
sounds better.
Yeah, well, because they don't like the stigmatization. Again,
But
that goes with it.
this man did everything in his power, including he stuck a shampoo bottle up his anus, perforated his colon, ended up in the hospital on death's door. They said he was septic, was about to die, but then he came back. Good as new. Good as new. We're like,
Yeah,
how the fuck did that
people's
happen?
addictions and fucked up behavior drives their it's messed up. It is so messed up.
But
Sex kids are just the most disturbing shit. And yeah, in prison, you're done. You are so done. I mean, they're the most hated, and I know
yeah,
that.
unless you keep to yourself and no one finds out. What we had, and I might have told this story before, but we had an inmate who was in my groups. He wasn't on my caseload, he was in my groups, and everybody liked him. He was very, very quiet, very unassuming. He was in he looked like he's in his 60s, but in prison that could be 40, because people age in prison. But he was up there in age. And but again, very quiet, very friendly. Everybody liked him. One day, another inmate requested him to be his cellie, to share a cell with him. Now, we don't know whether he already knew or just found out, but they ask for papers all the time. They really didn't in the mental health program until this. He became his cellie and was dead the next morning. And everybody found out this man was in for raping and murdering like a 4 and a 5-year-old. He raped one, then drowned them in the toilet while he was raping the other one, and drowned that one in the toilet.
Oh God.
Once everybody found out, the whole yard went fucking crazy. And there was one guy on my caseload who had been cellies with another guy for 10 years and found out that he was in one of the crimes he did was lewd and lascivious. And he's like, get this fucker out of my cell. Get this fucker out of my cell. I will kill him. Get him out of my cell.
He's already in prison. They don't care. They're going to kill you.
Yeah. And I mean, they had been friends for 10 years. That doesn't matter. That doesn't matter anymore. Get him out of my cell. So
because it's the most evil kind of
yeah,
sadistic behavior that you could. I'm surprised John Wayne Gacy wasn't killed in prison.
I don't know. I mean, you had what's his face, Dahmer, that was
yeah, he was killed. Yeah.
Karma. But
yeah.
Going back to also now criminal and how it's the Benjamins first, it's socioeconomic. My dad had this attorney. My parents paid for this attorney. They put up all this collateral, and the guy filed all these papers, and then it went to, you have a preliminary hearing. And the guy was like, okay, that's all this. They paid him like 50 grand, gave him their car. And he's like, okay, do you owe me more now? To take you further, it's more. It only took him to the very first step of filing paperwork and stuff. Like, we can't fucking afford this now. And so they got public defender. And I was in because I was working with the lawyers at the time. And this one attorney, my dad's attorney, is like, okay, so we're gonna focus on an appeal. Your appeal. And I'm like, wait a minute. So you're not even trying to understand what happened? You automatically have him guilty and we're gonna do an appeal? Like, why aren't you listening to what we're trying to say?
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, I know you deal with that in the appeal. It's like, so we're sitting here, my dad's facing these charges, and you don't even care to hear
Nope.
his side.
Nope.
And I told my dad, you need to get a new attorney. And this man who was, I was 23, so he was probably 50 or older than that. But you know, when you're like in your 20s, everybody's old. But I think he was in his 50s. He gets up on the table, literally up on the table, and he goes, fuck you to me. Because I told my dad he needs a new attorney. And he's climbing up on the table yelling, fuck you. And the other attorney that was sitting there was like, and I looked at him and I'm like, wow, that is so grown up of you.
It's like an episode of Jerry Springer.
Yeah, it was the most bizarre thing. And I'm like, this is the man who's supposed to be in court representing you.
Yeah, but how about
What
no?
the fuck?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's another thing with public defenders. I don't care what you did. Let's just get you the best deal possible.
Yep. That's usually how it works.
And I had guys
Unless
in prison that took deals because they didn't have money and they swore their innocence. I don't know, but they took deals because they didn't have the money.
Yeah, I know. It's sad. Again, money's what makes the world go round. And especially if you are innocent and you're being pegged for something, which is really shitty because that happens.
And my dad's attorney, and I swear this is true. I'm not saying this because it was my dad, but she said, because his business partners stole all the money in the business, and we know they did, and we had proof. But then they went and said that went to the district attorney so that they wouldn't get in trouble before my dad could say anything. And they said he did it, and they said, yeah, the fifth, they took the fifth or like anything. Immunity. They were given immunity to say whatever and not get in trouble. So when someone gives you immunity, what are you going to do? I can lie my ass off. So the judge did say to my dad, I cannot punish them. So I have to punish you for them.
Oh, that's so
It's in the court records. It's in the transcripts. I can't punish them. So I'm going to give you the punishment. And then my dad appealed, and I never knew this. When you appeal, you go back in front of the same exact judge. So my dad appealed it, and she granted his appeal, but she didn't change his sentence. It's like, yeah, but you're still getting this. And it's like, how, again, with the legal system, how is that fair? I'm appealing because you didn't do something right.
Well, it goes back to your fucking constitution and taking the fifth. That's bullshit. That shouldn't be allowed.
You shouldn't get immunity.
You shouldn't get immunity. If you're going and lying, you should be, again, no fucking logic.
When you give immunity to a criminal, I didn't shoot him. He did it. He went to the store. He bought the gun. He did everything. And it's like, how are you going to say, no, that didn't happen? Well, we have this guy saying it did. Yeah, but it was him. He did it all. He has immunity. You know, it shouldn't be that way. You shouldn't get complete and total immunity to be able to, I get it. We want to get this guy the word. Yeah.
It needs to change.
Yeah.
It needs to change in the States. It definitely needs to change in Canada. But if and when and how, who knows? It is 12/18.
Okay.
Just to give you the heads up.
That is fine. Okay. So on that note, we can talk more about prison, about the legal system. We can do a deeper dive. If you guys have questions or comments, please put them in the comments and we could do a deeper dive into this. I would love to do a deeper dive into this.
Yep, it's good.
Oh, yeah, you look like there was something you were waiting to say. Sorry.
No. Yeah, absolutely. Again, it's just it varies between countries, right? But it's interesting to see. And I mean, most Americans would die if they came up to Canada with our judicial system way worse than yours. At least you incarcerate people that need to be incarcerated. People here, because we don't have the resources, get a slap on the wrist. Yeah. It's really disturbing.
Well, the people that get a slap on the wrist here are usually typically the ones with, the money.
Yeah. Well, it's the same here, but not even. I mean, again, people get released or out, and even if they do commit some heinous act or crime or whatever, they're getting a very, 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 very minimal sentence, if one at all.
Yeah. I do want to talk about some of the sentencing and what happens and stuff like that too, because in our system, like we have Casey Anthony, who they only charged her with like a first degree and they didn't charge her with a second. I could be wrong. I'm just saying, giving an example. And since they didn't put second degree, the jury had no choice. It was like, it wasn't first degree, but you didn't, we can't then say second degree. You didn't put that there. So that's also how people get out.
Yeah.
I don't think you plan this. I think it happened because of your negligence, because you did manslaughter is doing something that you know could potentially end up in death, but you do it
Yeah,
anyway.
but you do it anyway. Yeah, exactly.
So, it's like, I know you didn't, plan on killing them, but you didn't care if you killed them.
That chick's a full-on psychopath.
But,
She is fully ASPD.
oh man, I was so fucking pissed off when that.
The whole world was pissed off. Everybody knew she was guilty as fuck.
But because they didn't put first or second or whatever degree, yeah, you're guilty, but you know what? They didn't charge you with that crime. So we can't find you guilty of that crime.
It's fucked up. It's
So,
all in the wording and the loopholes that they go based on. And it's just screwed.
yeah.
Anyway, on that note, folks, if you want to learn
Like,
more, post below.
subscribe, comment, and we will see you later.
Sounds good. Have a good day.
Take care.